Good evening and welcome to this live panel discussion under the Youth as Agents for Change initiative. My name is Tiffany Skerritt and I will be the moderator for this evening's panel. So the Youth as Agents of Change initiative is being sponsored by the Pan American Health Organization. It is geared towards building awareness around COVID-19, vaccinations and similar initiatives. And so this evening I'm joined by a diverse panel of youth who live on Montserrat, several of whom hold various titles or have a keen interest in the development of the island. They come from a variety of countries, or a variety of Caribbean islands, and represent a variety of sectors. So I will start with the person to my direct right, who is the Deputy Premier and Minister of Agriculture, Lands, Housing and the Environment in the Montserrat Youth Parliament, and that is St. Luc LeBlanc. Welcome, St. Luc.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
And to his right, we have Sandre Thomas, who is no stranger to most. He's a photographer and performing arts enthusiast. He also works in the Ministry of Health. Welcome to you, Sandre.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much, Tiffany, for having me.
To my left, I have Recruit Police Constable Nelleen Williams from the RMPS. Thank you for joining us, Nelleen.
Thank you for having me this evening.
And Recruit Police Constable Keston Thomas from the RMPS. Thank you so much, Keston, for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So, of course, as we begin, we want to say a huge thank you to the Pan American Health Organization, who I said is our main sponsor. But this partnership and this initiative is greatly supported by the Ministry of Health. We also have partners with the Montserrat Youth Parliament, who have a representative here, and other youth organizations. I have to recognize, of course, one of our panelists who will be joining us as well, my co-CARICOM Youth Ambassador, Oswin Kati, who is present. And of course, to all of you who are joining us via the live stream, whether it is via YouTube or if you're watching on televisions, thank you for joining us. So, youngsters, young people, my fellow young people, we are talking this evening about COVID, more so about the impact and what the way forward looks like for Montserrat and for the Caribbean. My first question would be, just to get to know you a bit, how would you say the COVID pandemic has affected you? Senu?
Thank you, Tiffany. I must say I'm not only a youth parliamentarian, I'm also a police officer within the Royal Montserrat Police Service as a marine officer. During the COVID pandemic, I must say it was a bit hectic as we as police officers, especially police officers, had to be working some long hours, putting extra work. But although we had a lot of work to do, but it had some pros to it, where some of us learned, and I personally learned a lot of skills, and use the social media platform to get abreast with world activities and different skills and stuff.
Oh, thank you very much. I know that Sandre can agree with you. What was the pandemic like for you, Sandre?
It depends on which aspect of the pandemic you want me to talk about. For me personally, COVID, in the end, closer to the end, created employment for me. It gave me an opportunity to work along with our quarantine team in the primary health care. And I am also beyond grateful for the opportunity where I was trained to swab individuals. That looks good on a CV for me. So that's a new training that I was able to receive, and also to work along with some amazing individuals in the Ministry of Health.
Fantastic. Nelleen, Keston, any inputs, personal experiences for you?
Personally, for me, during the pandemic, COVID created a lot of job opportunities for persons like myself. Coming from St. Vincent, there's a lot of persons who are they're academically, they have the qualifications for the job. They probably may not have the opportunity. And because a lot of persons didn't want to be vaccinated, there was a lot of vacancies that persons were now given the opportunity to fill. I was one of those lucky persons as well.
Well, we're happy to hear that. And this is an interesting take. We've had some of you mentioning that you've gained skills, you have been employed both Sandra and Nelline mentioning employment. Keston, on your side, what were the opportunities or learning points for you through this COVID-19 pandemic?
Well, COVID-19 for me was a fun time.
Not many would agree with you, but that's interesting. I'm listening.
Honestly, it was a fun time. I got lots of rest, and I can say that was the most I've ever been to the beach. I was literally living in the beach. So for me, it was very good. You know, despite the fear and the stigma out there about the COVID-19, for me personally, my experience was good and fun.
And it's good to have such a variety of perspectives because, you know, for a lot of persons, COVID-19, the pandemic was a very scary time. And I'm sure the contrast can be seen. You were on the more relaxing side, able to enjoy a bit of your island, a bit of nature because there was time off. And, you know, we had lockdowns. Persons like St. Luke would have been keeping persons inside and ensuring that the streets were empty. So it's quite a contrast to see that youth had very different experiences. I know I can share in terms of personally working along with Sandra and our primary healthcare team during COVID, doing the screening, testing large volumes of persons, reassuring persons as well who were having symptoms at home, who we monitored via the hotline. And so it's interesting to see that we each had our own experience, but it's no less valuable, although different. What would you say, so we've spoken personally, what would you say has been the impact of COVID-19 on youth? And I want to focus on Montserrat, but if you can give a broader perspective, that's also helpful. What would you say has been the impact of this pandemic? We've had 2 years, a good long period of lockdowns for some, and then a bit of freedom now, but still quite cautious. How do you think the youth responded to the pandemic? Sandra?
I think the biggest issue that we faced in Montserrat as it relates to the youth and the pandemic was the lack of access to face-to-face learning. A lot of students and teachers had to now adjust to a whole new idea of teaching and learning online. And in that time that they had to adjust, they were losing out on quality time to actually be teaching rather than adjusting.
Any takes on that?
Yeah, if I may add to what Sandra said, you know, as a result of not being able to go out and meet with friends and sit in a classroom and face-to-face learning, a lot of young people stated that they feel stressed, they felt lonely, you know, and that type of sadness came out because they are not able to meet their peers on a daily basis, or sometimes locked down for 2 weeks, not able to see their friends for 2 weeks, and you know. But also, I'll come back to the point where there were also opportunities to start small businesses, to learn skills and start small business and make some money out of the lockdown time.
That's very true. I want to kind of piggyback on the education aspect. Would you say that the mental health of young persons has been greatly affected? If so, in what way? So I know you mentioned our youth. I guess you're focusing more on school age. For those of us who are a bit older, there are impacts. I think the social one is a very good one to mention. The fact that we weren't able to socialize, and so the opportunity to relieve the stress after a long week. You can't really see your friends, and you're limited to only virtual meetings, virtual calls, video calls. What other impacts do you think we had in terms of our youth?
For me, I wouldn't be able to speak about the impact for Montserrat as I'm new to here, been here for a few months. But I can speak on behalf of St. Vincent, where I was in the heart of it all. It on both sides, it created opportunities for person, as gentleman said a while ago, gave persons the opportunity to learn new skills and start new businesses. It gave people the opportunity to take a risk with a lot of things. On the flip side as well, because persons couldn't really socialize as they wanted to, it made a lot of persons either anxious, they became withdrawn, or they suffered from depression. A lot of persons couldn't handle things, but some persons learned to deal with it. Some persons, you know, went out more, saw more persons out on the beach, more persons out in nature. So people started to kind of get back to the outdoors. That helps some persons, but maybe not, that's not everybody's cup of tea.
That's very true. Sandre?
It is a known fact that we do not live in an ideal world. And for some young people, the ability to just leave home and enter a different kind of calming environment, I believe that because they were no longer able to escape from their reality as much, it caused a lot of psychological impact as well. Because, some children grow up in not so ideal homes. I don't want to say abusive, but not so ideal homes. And now you can't even escape to go to school anymore. You're just home 24/7. But also, I would like to raise the fact that a lot of young people lost their jobs because here it is now that a lot of the jobs in the private sector, they weren't making as much money as they would want to. And as such, they had to release staff, and 9 times out of 10, you're going to release the youngest person on staff to keep those that
Youngest
have been
or
with
newest.
you for youngest or newest to keep those that have been with you the longest.
Very true. I mean, the WHO has reported that a great number of people have reported psychological distress and symptoms of whether it's depression, anxiety, or post-traumatic stress. What were some of your coping mechanisms that you might have used to deal with these negative emotions? What were some of the ways that you were able to escape or take a break when you felt that you were under pressure?
Well, Dr. Skerritt, during that time, during our first lockdown, I remember I used to live in Lookout, and I had my little backyard garden where I planted my greens, and that sort of gave me an area to just leave out, because research has shown that touching soil increases the level of serotonin in the brain, and this is called a happy chemical.
Yes.
So that gave me, when I went to my garden, I feel like, yeah, I'm just leaving everything behind, and this is just me doing what I love doing, and to this day I still do it, and this is what makes me happy.
Yes. And we are right. A lot of persons have found time to connect with nature, whether it's gardening or spending more time at the beach. One of the few times in months that we could escape during lockdowns was during designated exercise hours. Oh, yeah. And so we were relegated to exercising for, I think it was either an hour and a half in the morning or 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the evening. Like, you could go out. If you were on the road, the police would not send you back home, and you could enjoy some time. And so that was an opportunity, as we said, for a lot of persons to release those negative emotions and to focus on themselves. A lot of persons went through fitness journeys as well, right? They changed their diet. They had more time to focus on relaxation and exercise. And so their quality of life improved during the lockdown.
I was going to say, as you made mention of exercise, I am admitting on here right now that I do not exercise, but when we had the lockdown and I was told I have 2 hours outside, Tiff, I walked for miles. I enjoyed walking. I know I was supposed to do social distancing, officer, I'm sorry, but if I knew my friend lived within a certain distance, yeah. I am there. Yes. I am on my way there, on my way back. So I was introduced to exercise.
During the lockdown, excellent. Well, for those of you who are joining, if you're now joining us, you're joined the Youth as Agents for Change panel. It's sponsored by the Pan American Health Organization. And this evening, we're discussing the impact of COVID-19 and the way forward with youth who live on Montserrat. We're going to take a short break. You can take a listen to some of the testimonials recorded by our youth, and we'll be back.
Hi, my name is Jahir Sadwani, and I'm here to tell you why I took the COVID-19 vaccine. As a business owner, the freedom to travel was very important to me, and the COVID-19 vaccine allowed me to do so. However, if I didn't have to take it, I would not. I strongly believe in natural remedies and building my immune system through food from the earth. I do not regret taking the COVID-19 vaccine because it exposed me to a variety of different opportunities in the larger world.
These testimonials are being brought to you as part of the Pan American Health Organization Youth as Agents of Change initiative and the Ministry of Health. This initiative seeks to highlight the stories of youth and their experiences with COVID-19 during the pandemic. We hope to create opportunities to learn about COVID-19 and vaccinations in general by understanding our vaccination tendencies. We hope to stimulate conversations about vaccination that help to break down myths and counter misinformation. This can help to clarify their relevance and help you to make an informed choice.
My name is Tiffany Williams and I'm 32 years old. I chose to get vaccinated because I trust science and the specialists who have dedicated their time and energy to the creation of the vaccine, but most importantly to protect myself against the effects of the virus. I got COVID-19 in April 2022 and I do believe that the vaccine lessened the severity of my symptoms.
These testimonials are being brought to you as part of the Pan American Health Organization Youth as Agents of Change initiative and the Ministry of Health. This initiative seeks to highlight the stories of youth and their experiences with COVID-19 during the pandemic. We hope to create opportunities to learn about COVID-19 and vaccinations in general by understanding our vaccination tendencies. We hope to stimulate conversations about vaccination that help to break down myths and counter misinformation. This can help to clarify their relevance and help you to make an informed choice. Welcome back. My name is Tiffany Skerritt and I'm your moderator for this evening. We're talking with Youth on Montserrat about the impact of COVID-19 and the way forward. In case you're just joining us, this particular initiative is being sponsored by the Pan American Health Organization in partnership with CARICOM Youth Ambassadors and the Ministry of Health. This evening, I'm joined by youth from across the island who are from various islands and sectors, who represent various organizations and departments. We have our Deputy Premier and Minister of Agriculture, Lands, Housing and the Environment in the Montserrat Youth Parliament, Mr. St. Luc LeBlanc, Mr. Sandri Thomas, photographer, performing arts enthusiast, and a worker at the Ministry of Health, and police recruit, Constables Nelene Williams and Keston Thomas from the Royal Montserrat Police Service. So, of course, we say welcome back and thank you for joining us. We've started this evening our discussion on the impact of COVID, and we've shared a variety of personal experiences. We've also taken a look in terms of the wider scope, and I want to backpedal a bit in terms of looking at the fact that COVID-19 has affected our children especially, and those who are in the education system. We know that during lockdown, quite a few or all of our schools were closed for prolonged periods of time. And so there was a need to switch from in-person to online learning. I think Sandra wanted to give us a little bit more detail about what the impact really looked like on the teacher side, on the staff as well. Maybe a touch about parents. If anybody has any children or knows what it was like for parents, it would be good to get some impact.
At the start of the pandemic, I just happened to be working at the secondary school, Montserrat Secondary School, and there was some chaos in terms of getting children to make that switch and also getting teachers to make that switch. Chaos mainly for me because I had to now rally around 300 plus students to get their email address, get phone numbers for parents, getting lists together for, different sectors, the different key stakeholders for education, Ministry of Education. But I was also able to have conversation with different children, different students about how they feel with the whole issue of lockdown. And one of the main concerns brought out was that they felt as though they weren't being taught. They felt as though they were just being given assignments and deadlines to complete,
Yes,
rather than being able to ask questions to a teacher and so forth. So that was one of the biggest issues that they were facing. Now, in terms of teachers, they were also adjusting to a new type of classroom, especially for teachers of the older generation who are accustomed to chalk and chalk and board, the chalk and board style of teaching. They now had to adjust and adjust in time to still be able to give the children the amount of education that they need for the exams coming up.
How do you think we prepare for future pandemics? And let's talk a little bit about education. So from my side, or in general, what I'd want to say is that pandemics are inevitable, right? COVID-19 was not the first pandemic, and it will not be the last. We've seen over 100 years ago, Spanish flu, which would have affected over 500 million people, 45 million deaths. And so when you compare COVID to that, where we had 668 million cases, just over almost 7 million deaths, we know that pandemics are something, even if it's once every century, it's something that we can expect again. How do we prepare our students, prepare our teachers, prepare our parents for this type of event, you think? How do we prepare them?
Truth be told, it's going to be real hard to prepare students, especially those from 5 to 12 years, to be ready to be educated on a screen, But I believe that the development of ICTs and training of teachers to teach on ICT devices will make a great impact. Because even myself, as a student within the open campus, a political science student, right now, because of COVID, we were doing distance learning. To me, it's okay to me because I get to do 100% coursework.
Yes.
You understand? It's okay to me.
Yes.
But to get younger students to actually stay focused in front of a screen going to be extremely hard, and this is something that we need to look into.
I want to counter that because I see youngsters as persons who are IT savvy and who love being on devices. And so I think it provides us, maybe as youth in this time, with an opportunity. Because on the youth side, they love being on their parents' phones, they love having the tablets, they love having the laptops. How do we then tailor maybe the style of education or the style of teaching so that it's a bit more appealing? What do you think we can do?
Well, I have two younger brothers who so happen to benefit from this distance learning. And at first, it was a bit difficult, getting them to focus, getting them to stay in class, because they would always find a way out of class. And that was one of the biggest issues with the teachers, keeping the children focused, because they would be present in class and then they would turn off their cameras and they would go elsewhere and they will not be in class. And then there's work that they don't understand. And there's only so many parents that understand what's being taught now to what they learned way back when. So I believe in more of a blended approach going forward for teachers, in getting them accustomed to that online learning at times. Even if it's during the summer, you offer nice programs for them, coming up with creative ways of bringing across a topic, something that children generally don't like algebra. Find nice little games online. And that's something that my brothers love, those online games and those little videos. That's something they really enjoyed. And I think more children gravitated towards that. And that was a big plus for a lot of them.
I love that. So the blended approach is a very good option. And I take what you're saying because it is hard. I mean, distance learning, even as adults, is difficult. It requires a certain level of discipline, a certain level of investment of time as well. But you mentioned a very good point in terms of our parents having a challenge. How do we help our parents, you think, Keston? What do we do to get the parents maybe at a level where they can better assist their children from home?
Well, what I would recommend is that we have, just like what we're doing now, we have a panel discussion on COVID-19. Why not have a community meeting? Like you gather everybody, let's say once a month, to just talk about health. Like what are the benefits, how it can help us in going forward. And I think that parents should realize that the world is getting modernized, is going forward. So the issue of having our phones, like when I was growing up, having my phone was a big deal, having the laptop was a big deal. And if you do certain things, you might not get it. I think that's not the way we should go. I think that we should encourage it, but the good part of it, for for the children as well. Why not have ads? There is always these ads anytime you open up the laptop or the phone. Why not have health ads so that you could at least get their mind start playing on the health, and it's a big issue, so that they can.
So marketing, right? We have to
Yeah.
take it as a marketing strategy. Marketing to parents, marketing to children.
But if I may add also, just as we have children development programs and training, I believe that we should also have adult development trainings to
For
help,
parents?
for parents, to help them to, like, when these pandemics happen, that they're already into it.
Yes.
They're into even how to start up a computer and how to follow what the children are doing on that computer. This type of trainings.
Basic training for parents.
I believe that because of the pandemic, we were introduced, it was a rushed introduction, but we were introduced to online learning. And what we should do is realize that not just because now the pandemic is quote unquote over, that we should end that.
Yes.
It should be an ongoing conversation amongst parents, teachers, and even students about how we could continue to use this and apply it in our education system. Now, a big word that seems to be a problem for most individuals is this word of access. And I'm talking access now in terms of access to devices and access to internet. Not every household is blessed with devices, and there are even households who have more than one children, and even one device would not suffice. And then what happens when I have class, but mommy has work, and my older sister has class, and it's just one phone in the house? How do we cope with that? So I remember when I was young, we had...
Younger.
We had this initiative at the secondary school where laptops were provided.
This was a government-funded program.
Government-funded program where laptops were provided for each student. And I'm not necessarily saying that we need to get back to that because, that takes a heavy hit financially. However, I think long-term it will be beneficial. Nobody knows what's coming next.
That's
Nobody
right.
knows what can happen again. But to have some level of preparation, so prepared parents for what can happen, prepared teachers, let them integrate technology into their teaching. A lot of times students are told you can't walk with certain things to school and so forth. But now it's like, it's kind of weird going to school. For instance, you have IT, and now you have students doing IT without a computer. It's a whole different kind of thing now.
Yes.
But just integrate technology into the learning, no matter what subject it is. And then I believe that could help us to prepare for
the
whatever
future.
comes next.
That's a very good take. And so we are considering the conversation of blended education, continuing the use of devices, not only in ICT class, but outside and in other classrooms, and getting creative. Use of games, use of different platforms. I know that a lot of teachers as well use the internet and found online resources that already existed. And so they were able to offer that variety to their students. I like the idea, Kestel, of the marketing and sneaking in those ads, whether it's health related or otherwise, that allows and encourages our parents and students to branch out and maybe learn something new. I know we're going to transition to a break real quick, and we do have some panelists who we will be switching out. You're welcome to stay and rejoin us because we have a lot of questions. But we will continue to have the discussion about the impact outside of education in other sectors and how we plan our way forward. So we break quickly for these messages.
Hi, my name is Sanjay Thomas. I am 23 years old and I am not vaccinated against the COVID-19 virus. The reason I did not get vaccinated was simply because I didn't want to. I was infected with the virus in May and again in September. Both times it was an awful experience, but I recovered quickly and so far there are no lasting effects. Personally, I believe some vaccines are vital, while there are others which should be left to personal choice.
These testimonials are being brought to you as part of the Pan-American Health Organization Youth as Agents of Change initiative and the Ministry of Health. This initiative seeks to highlight the stories of youth and their experiences with COVID-19 during the pandemic. We hope to create opportunities to learn about COVID-19 and vaccinations in general by understanding our vaccination tendencies. We hope to stimulate conversations about vaccination that help to break down myths and counter misinformation. This can help to clarify their relevance and help you to make an informed choice. COVID-19 and the flu can be deadly, so protect yourself. Practice good hand hygiene, keep your hands clean, and avoid touching your mouth, nose, and eyes with unwashed hands. Limit close contact with persons who are coughing or sneezing, and for added protection, wear a face covering in crowded spaces. You can also call your health center and ask about boosting your immunity with a flu shot or the COVID-19 vaccine. Remember, don't let COVID-19 or the flu sneak up on you. These testimonials are being brought to you as part of the Pan American Health Organization Youth as Agents of Change initiative and the Ministry of Health. This initiative seeks to highlight the stories of youth and their experiences with COVID-19 during the pandemic. We hope to create opportunities to learn about COVID-19 and vaccinations in general by understanding our vaccination tendencies. We hope to stimulate conversations about vaccination that help to break down myths and counter misinformation. This can help to clarify their relevance and help you to make an informed choice. Welcome back to this live chat discussion under the Youth as Agents of Change initiative. This initiative is powered by PAHO and is a partnership with the CARICOM Youth Ambassadors and the Ministry of Health. This evening, I'm joined by a diverse panel of youth who live on Montserrat. And so we have been discussing the impact of COVID-19 and the way forward. Just before the break, we were discussing a bit more about how we continue our education and keep involving ICT in some way, so that for future pandemics, not only our students, but the parents and teachers will be better prepared for the transition. At this time, we welcome one of our new panelists, and we welcome Mr. Trevon Pollard. He's no stranger to you. He's one of our popular radio hosts and a local entertainer. Trevon, welcome to the panel.
A pleasant good evening to you, Tiffany, and I'm delighted to be here.
So as we press on with the other questions, my next question to the panel would be a follow-up. So the Ministry of Health here in Montserrat has a number of mental health resources available for persons who find themselves in need of assistance. Simple things like relaxation therapy, and we also offer more intense forms of therapy like psychotherapy. How comfortable, I'm going to ask you to be vulnerable here, how comfortable are you with accessing these services, and what more do you believe can be done to improve the mental health of our young people? Trevon?
Okay, I think, one, our generation, and this is a broad statement, as youth, we really and truly don't like expressing our feelings and even having conversation about anything pertaining to our feelings, how we feel, anything to deal with mental health. There's some form of a stigma surrounding it. So I'm saying that we need to create like those motivational groups, different groups, to be able for us to sit down and have conversations about what is affecting us. Empowerment groups, that's the right word. And I think on the Ministry of Health path, to promote some of these services, because I don't know some of them exist. And I would love to be the first person to take advantage of some of these services just to prove to some of the young people that it's okay. Yes. You know, it's okay to have a conversation about your mental health, because as young people, we have things that affect us, different reasons that we are stressed out.
That's right.
It doesn't have to, it could be work related. Some people have their personal problems at home, but utilizing these services is very important for us as young people to be able to carry out our everyday function, you know what I mean, as young people.
Definitely. And I find it interesting that I think my view would differ a little bit. I feel like our generation is a little bit more vocal when it comes to mental health, but I have to clarify that to say that generations are a very broad category. And so there's Gen Z, there are the millennials, there are, you know, many subsets. And so we do differ in terms of how we see things. We talk a lot more, I think, well, at least in my personal circles, about going to therapy, about getting counseling, about not being okay at any given time. And so maybe not on a professional level for seeking help, but maybe on a group level, we are okay with talking to each other and be like, you know, work was kind of rough this week, I don't feel that good. But maybe not taking that final step to get help. Sophia?
Well, I would have to agree with Mr. Pollard over there that I am not even aware that these initiatives are available to young people. As a young man, I will say that you'll find it very hard for me to open up to you. Even in relationships, they may have to ask you 10 times, what is wrong with you? What is wrong with you? What is wrong with you? Before you open up to say
yes.
What is wrong with you? You understand? And I believe that we do need teen mental health programs. And if there is any already, make it be known to the young people. Because a lot of, especially, as I say, especially young men are afraid of saying something is wrong with them just because they're afraid of being belittled or being seen as less as a man. And then right now we have an increasing number of suicides. It may not be in Montserrat, but if you watch generally, there's an increase in suicide, in the suicide rates, you know, just because persons are afraid to speak out and speak up.
How do you think we can help, or how do you think we can better target our youth? So the Ministry of Health has a mental health unit. There is an assigned psychiatrist, a clinical psychologist, there are psychiatric nurses, you know, there are supporting staff that exist currently on island in this unit. They operate out of St. John's Clinic. You can call to make an appointment. You know, it is a service that is accessible, is what I'll say. How do we, or rather available, how do you think we can make it accessible or more attractive so that persons know that it is there and may be more willing to utilize it? Sandre?
Funny enough, we have been speaking about utilizing technology, and I say this is now an opportunity for us to maybe create ads to put on the radio waves or create posters just to let people know that things are out there. I myself have accessed the facilities that are available, the resources that are available to us, and as an individual employed by the Ministry of Health, I make a bold statement by saying that in any way possible, I will do my part to promote the support that is done, that is being pushed by the Ministry of Health. Because, like I said, I accessed it before. And Tiff, when I tell you, at first I was scared to tell anybody I was going to therapy. But when I went in, I simply had a conversation, just a conversation, just to have somebody listen to you. And I left that room feeling much better than when I went in. So for any young person listening, a simple conversation can make a world of a difference. So by all means, make a phone call to the St. John's Clinic and somebody will be there to listen to you.
I love that. And really and truly, it is about having these conversations. I think this panel discussion is a good starting point in terms of sharing ideas and experiences and being open about it. St. Luke, you made an excellent point when it comes to the difference between men and women and how we share and express emotions, how we share and express experiences. Would you say that the challenge exists among men, or is it something that is also between men and women in terms of sharing and expressing? So that is to say, do you feel okay sharing with your friends who are male, and the challenge is with people of the opposite sex, or it's across the board?
Well, I do believe it's across the board. It is across the board, but you may find young men being afraid to open up. But it's something that is across the board.
Trevon, any input?
Well, it's across the board, but let me lean on the men because I'm a young man myself, and say, as a young man, it's very difficult, as Saint Luke said, to even have conversations pertaining even to about going to the doctor, for instance. As men, we really and truly are afraid of going to the doctor. I don't know why, but I'm one of those persons that really and truly don't like going to the doctor. And once there's something wrong with you, or you sense that something is wrong with you, we tend to, as men, to go in to ourselves instead of wanting to say, okay, let me go and access the facilities the services, that are there to get better. And then there's a lot of young people in general that are walking around with baggages from when they were even younger. And there's even adults that are walking around with baggages from past relationships and past hurts that they never even got the opportunity to get over.
True.
But then sometimes as young people, we mask it, and it's okay. It's okay for a while until you get to that point where it's unbearable. And sometimes we express ourselves in different forms. Some people decide they're going to go the suicide route. Some people decide, they do other things that I really and truly won't mention just for time. But yeah, as I said, we really and truly need to make known that these services are available, and also create some form of a friendly way of depicting it so it does not seem that serious.
Nelline, I would love your input. Do you think that maybe, although we're talking about health and mental health, and so it's placed in a clinic setting, do you think there's room for removing this, maybe not the unit, but the service, placing it in a space that is not so clinical, not so health-based, so that it seems like a place you go maybe for recreation, or it's placed within a space where you go for other things? Now, I'm not saying that we should put the mental health unit in the basketball stadium, but maybe putting it in a space where young people are already accessing a building, a room for something else. What do we think?
You made mention of a basketball stadium, and I actually disagree with you slightly. I would be extremely happy if I go to the basketball stadium to just have a quick practice, and I could see my therapist there as an individual rather than a doctor. So then we could connect more on an individual level, because if I keep seeing you as my therapist, then it's just going to be like, okay, well, probably I should make an appointment every time I see you. And it's an issue I have in different areas. Just like, for instance, I keep saying that when we look at ministers, we see them as ministers, so we kind of have a barrier. Whereas if we see them as individuals, it makes a world of a difference. So if we can see our therapists as individuals who actually have fun, individuals who play basketball, individuals who go running, individuals who go carkill to watch races, then
who are more social then.
Who are more social, it makes it easier for us to connect with them and actually have conversations with them. With that being said, Tiff, a huge problem when it comes to expressing ourselves is who can we trust? We understand that we live in a very small society, and when you make yourself vulnerable, you have to keep in mind, okay, who are we going to talk to?
Yes.
And I'm not saying that in terms of just with the professionals, I'm talking with across the board. I'm going to talk to my friend about something, but can I trust this friend? To what extent can I trust this friend? So then I prefer to keep things locked up inside. That's the mentality of young people. It's better to keep it locked up inside. But I look at it with the analogy of a rug. If you keep sweeping things under the rug, eventually you're going to trip over it. So, you got to start expressing these things. Find somebody who you could trust, who you could talk to, and start expressing yourself before it gets too late.
I quite agree. And so maybe there is an opportunity for us as young persons to be ambassadors, representatives for mental health in our different sectors, in our different areas, and to encourage the conversation to be had. I know that St. Luke is a gym junkie, and so he's always in the gym. Maybe there is a room to have those conversations, or maybe we could take a different approach and approach these areas or send persons into these areas where we can have these conversations on a casual space. So that's some food for thought as we talk about mental health and COVID and the way forward. Of course, if you're tuned in and you're listening, we thank you for joining the Live Island stream. Some of you might be watching via the GIU channel on TV. If you are here, thank you for joining us. We are here under the Youth as Agents of Change initiative, sponsored by the Pan American Health Organization and being hosted by our CARICOM Youth Ambassadors in partnership with the Ministry of Health. Now, we're going to move along, transition rather, to another important topic in terms of COVID and its impact. The aim of this discussion, of course, is not to discuss vaccines in terms of their usefulness, etc., but to look at factors that might affect why people choose to or choose not to. So my next question would be, what would you say were some of the key motivators that led young people to, or the things that influenced them to maybe be a little bit hesitant? And what are some things you think contribute to people being hesitant towards taking vaccines? Who wants to take the first dig? Nelly.
Well, from my experience with COVID back at home, when the vaccines first rolled out, honestly, a lot of young people were very much, we didn't want to take it. We asked questions. There was also a lot of conspiracy theories running around, and that was one of the major drivers because there were talks about, how would your reproductive health suffer from this? What happens after I take the vaccine? What happens 5-10 years down the road? And those were questions that we didn't have answers to. And that was a major factor in persons not getting vaccinated. What I saw, though, was that what drove a lot of persons to get vaccinated in terms of youth were opportunities. Because persons who didn't want to take, there was a major gap. There were a lot of opportunities for persons. And quite honestly, that's part of the reason why I got vaccinated. Yes. The information that was available, from WHO and stuff that was there from trusted sites, the information was there, but it didn't answer the questions that we had. Mm-hmm. And a lot of men felt that, there were reports of persons, had adverse effects, and then those weren't being addressed by the professionals, and that caused a lot of persons to just turn off.
Mm-hmm. So part of the challenge moving forward, or I guess our approach as youth, as we think about looking at future pandemics, is getting the right information out there, right? And so you made a good point. It's sometimes easier to access the misinformation and the WhatsApp forwards and the TikTok gimmicks than it is to access maybe information that's better researched or has a little bit more data behind it. And so, misinformation is part of the challenge, and it drives hesitance. It's definitely a factor. And of course, the more information that people know, the better they can decide whether they want to or if they don't. Because at the end of the day, it is a choice, right? What are some other things, yeah?
There were also a lot of parental and peer pressure. For instance, even if I, as a young person, wanted to get vaccinated, I still live in a household with my parents and they choose not to get vaccinated, then, I'm looking up to them. I've been looking up to them for the past 23 years, and now they're deciding not to get vaccinated. Then, okay, cool. If they're not going to do it, I'm not going to do it. Or if I decide, okay, let me go and get vaccinated, and my friends say, why are you getting vaccinated? And so forth. Then we have a discussion. It's like, okay, if he's not doing it, then I'm not doing it. So there's a lot of peer and parental pressure as related to the vaccine.
Well, if I may give my input.
Yeah, of course.
As my friend here just stated that the information that was available to us, I'm not speaking of information from, as you said, TikTok or Wikipedia. I'm talking about information from trusted sites, WHO, NIA, NIS, NIH. This kind of, the information that they give most time contradict each other. And this, to me, was a major issue. One of the main reasons I personally did not get vaccinated, right? And you would say that the information is there, so it is a choice. I would have to disagree with you there. It was not a choice. It was never a choice. But as I said, the information that was available to us was one of the main issues and main motivation towards persons not getting vaccinated?
I know we've had some focus groups, and they were very helpful as we went through this particular initiative. And I think one of the things I would have learned through some of the focus groups were that, as we mentioned information, but the approach, so maybe the prelude. So think about it this way. St. Patrick's Day, St. Patrick's activities are coming up. All the promoters are on the radio months in advance. The promoters are outlining all the details about their event, why you should attend the event, what you need to know, how much it costs, benefits, etc., how you should dress. And so on the marketing side, some persons felt like there wasn't that preparation. And there, for a lot of countries who released it, there really wasn't a marketing strategy, or we didn't approach it like how big business would approach a promotion that they wanted people to be a part of. And so in this age where marketing is so important to not only selling, but sharing products that are of value, that is an element that needed to be worked on. And so I think looking at future pandemics, knowing that although we're youth now, give it another 10, 20 years when we're in even bigger decision-making positions and have the say, we have to look at how we market, not only treatments or vaccine opportunities, but whatever is available. So if it's not a vaccine and it's lifestyle change, how do we market it so that those who can benefit from it understand that, yes, you have a choice to exercise or not to exercise, but this is kind of what happens when you do exercise. And it's not exactly the same, but part of it is about marketing. And so that was a challenge. Trevon, what was your experience in terms of deciding whether for or against, or the influences from outside or in your inner circle? What was your experience with vaccine hesitance as a young person?
Well, my friends decided they weren't going to take it, and I decided to go and take it because Trinidad was closed and I do most of my music business in Trinidad. So I pondered about it for a few months, and then I decided, well, I'm just going to take it. Whatever happens, because coming out of the pandemic, I decided I'm going to just put my music first as an entertainer. And there was a lot of information on site from PAHO.
Yes.
So I wasn't working in the media field. I wasn't looking at the TikToks and the...
At all, right.
And I had a lot of friends on Instagram posting these conspiracy theory about,
Yes.
Yeah. So, but I focused on the information, even though there was a variety of different vaccines that you could have taken.
Correct.
They had Pfizer, the AstraZeneca, and Johnson & Johnson. I really and truly felt that the information on the some of the brands of vaccine was lacking. Mm-hmm. I know in Montserrat we had AstraZeneca and
then Pfizer.
And then Pfizer. I took Pfizer. I waited out until Pfizer came because I did my research on Pfizer, and I took Pfizer. But some individuals, they just ran in because they thought that, for instance, I have an underlying condition. I'm an asthmatic.
Yes.
So that was even more, I felt a kind of way. I said, listen, I have to go because...
You don't want anything happen to you.
Exactly. So I had a lot of different motivating reasons why I was going to take it.
Yes.
But I think information was out there. I think it was just, and I saw the different efforts from the health department here, using radio and social media to get the message across. But as I said, it was something new that came into the world, and then it was your personal choice to say, well, am I going to listen to these credible sources, or am I going to listen to my friends who are saying, well, they say, the injection is all about the Antichrist, or whatever it was.
Yes.
But I decided to go the route and to just listen to the credible information, and I'm still fine up to this day.
And it's interesting, his motivator was different, his motivator was different because it was business, right? Yeah. It became more about you personally, but also, this benefits my business, it benefits my ability to earn, and so you thought a bit more long-term.
Yep.
So I guess as we look at COVID and future pandemics, as I said, this conversation is all about the way forward. We have some work to do. We have the St. Luke's who we need to convince, right? And maybe not convince to do or not to do, but to provide better information, clearer information, and yes, put a little marketing spin. Speak to the specialists like Narissa who know how to tell the story, and so the opportunity definitely is there.
I must also say that we must understand that the pandemic was unexpected, and as such, nobody was going to have the information about vaccines just like that. As time progressed, then more and more information was released through media. So I was not going to just take a vaccine based on the first information that came out because I don't know what I'm dealing with.
Yes.
They don't know what they're dealing with. But as time went on, then more and more information came out. So I believe that was a part of the reason as well why initially a lot of people were hesitant to take the vaccine.
All right, no problem. I think this is a good time for a break. We have some new panelists who will be joining us after the break. So if you're here with us, thank you for joining. Thank you for staying with us. It's been just about an hour of discussions. We've had some very interesting ideas and concepts, perspectives on COVID-19, its impact, and the way forward. Taking a break, we'll be back soon.
Me llamo Claribel Figueroa y tengo 23 años. Yo me vacuné contra el virus de COVID-19 porque en ese tiempo yo necesitaba viajar. Yo contraí COVID-19 en mayo del 2022 y los primeros 2 días no sentí ningunos síntomas, pero después empecé a sentir gripe y tenía dolor de cabeza, dolor de espalda. Entonces fui y me hice la prueba de COVID-19 y sí, salió positiva. Los otros 2 días me la pasé con mucho dolor alrededor del cuerpo, pero después de esto es como si no tuviera COVID, ya no sentía ninguno de los síntomas, aunque en ese tiempo todavía yo estaba positiva del virus.
These testimonials are being brought to you as part of the Pan American Health Organization Youth as Agents of Change initiative and the Ministry of Health. This initiative seeks to highlight the stories of youth and their experiences with COVID-19 during the pandemic. We hope to create opportunities to learn about COVID-19 and vaccinations in general by understanding our vaccination tendencies. We hope to stimulate conversations about vaccination that help to break down myths and counter misinformation. This can help to clarify their relevance and help you to make an informed choice.
Hi, my name is Jahir Sadwani and I'm here to tell you why I took the COVID-19 vaccine. As a business owner, the freedom to travel was very important to me, and the COVID-19 vaccine allowed me to do so. However, if I didn't have to take it, I would not. I strongly believe in natural remedies and building my immune system through food from the earth. I do not regret taking the COVID-19 vaccine because it exposed me to a variety of different opportunities in the larger world.
These testimonials are being brought to you as part of the Pan American Health Organization Youth as Agents of Change initiative and the Ministry of Health. This initiative seeks to highlight the stories of youth and their experiences with COVID-19 during the pandemic. We hope to create opportunities to learn about COVID-19 and vaccinations in general by understanding our vaccination tendencies. We hope to stimulate conversations about vaccination that help to break down myths and counter misinformation. This can help to clarify their relevance and help you to make an informed choice. Welcome back, and thank you for joining us. We're here discussing COVID-19, its impact, and the way forward. I'm joined by various youth here on Ireland from diverse sectors and backgrounds who are sharing their perspectives and opinions. This evening, I want to welcome to the panel my fellow CARICOM Youth Ambassador, Oswin Kati.
Good evening, Tiffany. Happy to be here.
And Ms. Sharice Allen, who is social worker in charge of child and family services. Thank you for the invite and welcome, Tiffany. All right, so we're continuing the conversation. It has been quite an engaging discussion so far. We've looked at COVID-19, its impact here on Ireland, looking at the impact on education sectors, how we can integrate ICT more. We've looked at the impact on mental health and our approach to making our mental health services more appealing to young persons, and looking at as well some factors that affect the vaccine hesitance. So quite an interesting discussion, and we'll be continuing. My next question to the panelists: what, in your opinion, are the main health issues affecting young people here in Montserrat? What would you say that if you ask your friend or those you work with would be the primary health issues that affect our youth?
I can go first.
All right.
I think from a professional standpoint, I would say mental health related issues. And I think that is because of the stigmatization and the discriminatory types of attitudes that we tend to have as a Caribbean society in relation to those issues. In addition to that, I think in terms of addressing those issues, one of the areas that we struggle with most is the lack of resources or the limited resources. I think in the pandemic in particular, I think we didn't have the infrastructure in place to cater to, one, the pandemic and the mental health issues that would be associated with the pandemic. The added pressure of losing a job, not being able to cope at home with the right environment, etc. So I know one of the areas that we did not adequately explore would be telecounseling. And that's something I think going forward we'll have to be able to address and look forward to, because we don't know when the next one will be here. And in addition to that, staffing issues, I know the mental health unit in particular, we have one main person, which is Dr. or Mr. Bamsili, just to be sure. And in addition to that, he's ably supported by Miss Donique Lane. And it's basically a two-tag team. And I think we have to be able to look at those staffing issues, because the social services department, as we know, we have social workers there who can assist, but in terms of that specialist area, we would need some more support.
So definitely the issue of mental health coming up again, and our ability to serve the community, especially the young community. I love the idea of the telecounseling, because even in a pandemic when you can't necessarily go outside, there might be an opportunity to WhatsApp call or a message and have that conversation still occur. Any other areas? What other challenges you think young people face in terms of health? In general, young people are the healthier part of the population. They tend not to have many chronic illnesses. However, the area of infectious disease is of concern. What would you say about that?
Let me just add to what Ms. Allen was saying about mental health as well. I think the lack of rehab is something serious, because there's a lot of young people that are hooked on substances. I'm going to use the general term substances. And after they make it to a certain point, they are, as a famous Calypsonian said, they're left for dead. You know, they're void of all worth to the community. And I literally have seen this in multiple individuals from different age ranges. And I think we don't have access to rehab here. But I think to put the framework in place that we are going to send these individuals once it is deemed by either the court, because I know, for instance, there were one individual that the court made a decision that he needed rehab, and to this day he never made it. And that's a personal friend of mine. And then there are others that are walking around that it hasn't been identified that they have a mental problem. So knowing that they need rehab is non-existent because they haven't accessed the facility or the services to be deemed someone with a problem or with some form of a mental illness.
Requiring intervention.
Yeah, exactly. So that's something that we need to have in place ASAP, because we cannot say, but I'm saying there's a lot of people that are using substances in this country. And from just alcohol, I know for a fact there were a lot of individuals, some of the brightest minds that were hooked on alcohol in this country, but never got the opportunity to go to rehab and to clean themselves up and to come back. That happens all over the world, but it does not happen in Montserrat. So that's something that I'm advocating for ASAP.
I am happy you mentioned substance, and I've noted it. I want to broaden the discussion to say, is substance abuse something that is culturally accepted and normalized? And how then, as youth, do we have that conversation, address the issue, and make the changes? So is substance abuse culturally acceptable in Montserrat? Would you say that it's culturally appropriate and acceptable in our country to drink alcohol excessively, and that's just what we do? Oswin?
Definitely. I don't think it's even a question, to be honest. And it's not, I know we focus on Montserrat, but it's more of a Caribbean thing. I think that as Caribbean people, Montserratians, alcohol is like a part of us. And it's a byproduct of that. We seem to also encourage the youth, not everyone, but people seem to encourage the youth to start drinking from a young age as well. And there's also the fact that we don't take IDs at bars. So anybody could just walk in. If you look old enough, they just give you a drink. And that's it. You have your alcohol, you give your friends, you share with your friends, and you start drinking from your 15 and you continue. So Trevor was exactly right. Substance abuse, alcoholism, it's a real problem. I think putting ID checks in place would help greatly. That would stymie it, definitely.
Yeah, as you said, it is a norm. It is culturally accepted. And if you do not drink, you're not the cool kid on the block, and it also comes with peer pressure, because you may not want to drink, but your friends are drinking. Well, take a shot, man, after all, and then you end up taking a shot, and then things go sideways for you. You understand? And with that comes, when we backtrack to the question you asked before, I wanted to point that as young people, we want to live our best lives, right? And then there's this Creole term we say, too short, too flang. We want to be hot and all around. And then we end up getting, and there's an increase in STIs and STDs, And I believe something that can happen is the Ministry of Health partnering with Lime and Flow. And just like how they would always send information to our phones to say, text, just text us all day long, twice a week, send a text so you can remind persons, abstain. Use protection, abstain, use protection, send ads on Facebook, on WhatsApp, on Instagram. And I believe that will help to remind persons that this is a serious matter that must be taken into consideration.
And so partnering with government and the private sector in terms of reaching not only young persons, but the wider population. Cherise?
Yeah, I think I just wanted to add from what St. Luke was saying is that what's really needed is greater efforts in terms of sensitization programs. I know that Penny and the health promotional team are doing quite a lot in terms of the radio and so forth, but maybe what we need to do is to find the appropriate target markets for our young people, capitalizing on social media and finding ways to get the message out there and educating them as well as to how they address some of these concerns that they have, how do they deal with some of these problems.
I recall, I think Oswald would remember as well, when we were in primary school, the RMPS had a program called the DEAR program. Yep. And DEAR stood for Drug Awareness Resistance Education. And so as we transitioned into high school, the thought was that primary school was your safe space. But when you go over into that high school, there are going to be all these people who might be trying to get you to take all these substances. And so we were armed with information by these police officers who would come in every week, and they would teach us about the different substances, about their effects, about the long-term consequences. There was a song affiliated with it that we had to learn at the end of the year, but I knew by the end of that year that when you got into MSS, if anybody came close to you with any candy that you never see before, or tried to give you any spliff or tell you to drink anything, you are to tell them no, and we were encouraged and empowered to do so. I think there's a room for that program to be continued or revamped in whichever area, and maybe there is room as well for youth voices. I love that you mentioned that even in our own circles, we have the opportunity to empower our friends and to be the standout who says, we're out on Friday, this is my Friday off, I'll be the one who drives. You guys can have something to drink in moderation, but I'll be the driver, and having the whole concept of a designated driver in the Caribbean and not going home after the party where you can barely see the road and hoping to avoid police officers who might be, looking out for you. So empowering young persons, being champions as well in our own circles for avoiding and reducing substance use and substance abuse. Someone touched on sexual reproductive health in terms of the fact that being under the influence of substances also affects your ability to say no to having sex or making choices that are not necessarily safe. And so you may not be using condoms and reducing your risk of getting infections. And I would have to say that sexual transmitted infections are another area where young persons are most affected. We are the age group where persons are having the most sex, and so by side effect or by virtue of that, we are most at risk of becoming infected. How do we have the conversation about getting tested? How do we encourage or ensure that not only we are getting tested, but our friends are getting tested, and we're okay with having the conversation by saying, St. Luke, something happened to me and blah, blah, blah. What do you think I should do? And your recommendation is, seek help. How do we have those conversations about sex and sexual infections?
Well, let me give an example. We found out that there were free VDRL and I think STDs tests, HIV, and so on and so forth at the lab. So me and all my friends, we piled up into one Jeep and we went down there and we got tested. But we were going in one by one. When one came out and when the results came, we all did this. And everybody was clean. So every year, every December, we take that trip up there. And it's fun. So
it's fun if everybody is negative.
Well, so far, we have all been negative. Praise
good practices,
the Lord.
Good practices.
But as I'm saying, getting the information out via social media is very important. But we must understand consequences. I think sometimes how STDs are marketed to us, we don't sometimes highlight that fact that certain STDs cannot be cured. Certain STDs as well, they damage your reproductive system as well. So once we weigh in on the negative effects and the negative impacts of these diseases, it won't be so fun getting it and spreading it. Because I know instances in the community at one point where claps and some of the other disease was spreading like wildfire. And it was like a norm, and people weren't going to the hospital to get treated.
Correct.
But at the end of the day, when you find out in the end, it might be years down the line when you realize, it had a toll on your body. You're going to be saying something else. So prevention, as I said, is better than cure. And it's just about, getting the information out. I know for a fact that the health promotion unit, because we go to the health promotion unit as well for condoms, me and my friends, penny sauce many times. So
my question to the panel would be, yes, I love the idea of group testing, especially in the sense that it's positive peer pressure because you're going with friends and the idea is that you want to make sure that everybody's good. What is the right age? I mean, we're talking about young people. What is the right age to start having these conversations with young persons? When is the right time?
I believe it should start from home, right? As parents, you can sit and have a conversation with your child, especially your daughter, and let them know how harmful this world can be, right? And when we start speaking, not we, because I don't have a child yet, but when you start speaking to your children about sex and about life, it gives them that feel that when they go into school, and this is a secondary school, and they have family life classes, you know, they already know about these types of things. They go to secondary school where they, quote unquote, when it starts to happen, you understand? So they know the do's and the don'ts when it comes to sex and sex life.
So it starts at home. The conversation starts at home. Cherise?
I quite agree with St. Luke. I think it's incumbent on parents to begin these conversations at home. We have to admit that our children are a lot more exposed than ever before. And so we have to be able to put those safety nets in place by having the gateway so that they can have those conversations. And then we just don't rely on the school. The school is supposed to be there for reinforcement purposes, but not just rely on the school. There is a role for parents to play, and so we kickstart the conversations at school. Obviously, there are the various subject areas in the curriculum that will expose them at the primary level, like health, science, etc. And when they move over to the secondary school, you have PSME and the various sciences. But I think it's important for us to begin those conversations at home as early as possible, because once they're navigating the internet, they might just come across a video on TikTok, maybe Instagram or what have you. And so it is important for parents in particular to start those conversations.
Definitely. So I know that we have some viewers, and so we're happy to have you. We're checking in and we're wrapping up the conversation. We've been discussing COVID-19 and its impact. We've actually branched out a bit wider to general health topics and how we can approach these topics and get a hold and maybe target our youth a bit better, market them a bit better, and ensure that we're taking care of these health issues. But my question would be, in closing, as we wrap up, we are adjusting to this new normal. I know a lot of persons were looking forward to things going back to how they were. The reality is that although we have reopened, things are not the same. How do we adjust to this new normal? And what would you say to persons who are still hoping that we can go back to 2019 or 2020 in terms of how we live and how we are experiencing life now?
Well, I would say in terms of persons who want to go back to 2019, there's no going back. Where we are now is we just have to build upon what we've learned over these past few years and just try to implement the things we've learned, try to stay away from negative sources in terms of education, put things in place for things like this in the future. So future pandemics, making sure your teachers are up to scratch when it comes to e-learning. Making sure your students have access to computers way before a pandemic. Just let them know, hey, you could get a computer from here if you need it. If anything happens, this is what happens. In terms of vaccinations, just continue sensitizing the public, have forums like this, just let the youth know, because the youth are the main, they're against vaccinations for whatever reason. So just have conversations like this, let them come in, let them tell us what their problems are. We tell them the benefits, the cons, just general conversations to prepare for the next time. The next time, whenever that may be.
As persons who have survived, and I'm going to say beyond survive, have thrived through the pandemic, because persons have shared how they've gained, there've been opportunities for work and business, etc. What would you say have been your two key lessons? What would you say have been your takeaways from this pandemic? Looking forward to the next, not in terms of positively, but knowing that it's inevitable. What were your two key lessons that you learned coming out of this last pandemic?
Well, as a creative, I learned that if a virus could have come all the way from China, that's the origin, and I'm an artist, the world is small. That is exactly what the COVID-19 virus taught me. The world is small, and I can reach as much people the same way the COVID-19 virus touched all of us, utilizing the internet. The internet created one small space. So we no longer have to travel miles and miles and miles to reach other people. So I, for instance, am utilizing the internet to make sure, but I'm speaking from my perspective as a creative, as an artist, utilizing the internet to make sure that I get my content out there so it can reach people the same way. Networking as well. The COVID-19, the pandemic created a greater space because more persons were utilizing the internet and conversations. I spoke to so much people during the pandemic, even on social media. You know, I just sometimes send a random message, and the type of people who responded. And
you were surprised?
Yeah, because they were more on their handsets. They had more time to be utilizing ICT and social media and so on and so forth. So yeah, those are the 2 points I would take away from the pandemic. The world is very small, and if we utilize the internet, we could touch as much people and lives as possible.
Excellent takeaways. Hello.
I agree with Paul over. I really do agree with him. However, I do believe in patience, having patience, because it was not easy during the pandemic. It was not easy being home, not being able to go to work. That's one. Secondly, enjoy family life. You know, a lot of persons rented on the internet how they wanted to go back to work because they cannot stand staying home with the children every day like that. You know, but as time goes by, you understand and you love family life, the movie nights, the you know, all what you do for your family and your husband, your children, you know. So these are the 2 things I really take off from
patience and making the most of that time.
Family, yeah.
Cherise?
For me, it was understanding that life is not linear. There's always going to be roadblocks. And somebody once said that there are no problems, just solutions. And if I were to personalize it a little bit more, I was at the tail end of my studies and I had to come back home. And what it taught me is that networking is also important. So had it not been for the networking channels that I was able to forge during my time at Cavell campus, then I probably would not have been as successful as I had intended to. So I was able to rely on my colleagues for the various resources to complete the assignments. In addition to that, balance is important because while I was completing my studies, I was still expected to work. And so it was quite challenging, obviously balancing the competing demands of work as well as school. So those are the 2 main points that I would love to encourage persons to maybe implement or adopt for future circumstances.
Oswin, your 2 takeaways from this pandemic, lessons that you learned?
Well, in terms of lessons I learned, taking time for yourself, that's very important. Going into the office every day could be very mundane. It gets, after a while, so taking those long walks on the beach, taking walks to Corkill, coming back, that was very important. Yeah, very important. Just taking time out for yourself, it actually helps your mental health as well.
Definitely.
So that's one lesson. The next lesson is that, as Trevon said, the internet. It's very small, it's very powerful. You could have even invented new revenue streams while in the pandemic. So yeah, that's
your takeaways. Thank you so much. And so as we close, I want to say a huge thank you to our panelists. For those who were here, who shared with us before, Recruit Police Constable Nelline Williams, Recruit Police Constable Keston Thomas, Sandre Thomas as well, who was here with us before, and to the panelists who are wrapping up. It was a pleasure being your moderator and sharing in this conversation. I think this may be the first, hopefully, of several of these conversations. We want to say a huge thank you to Live Islands, iTech Inc., of course, to our sponsors, the Pan American Health Organization, and partners, the Ministry of Health, and of course, this session was being hosted by our CARICOM Youth Ambassador Corps. We're so happy to have you, and if you enjoyed this evening's panel discussion, feel free to share the link with someone who might have missed it. And we sign off. It's been a pleasure, and we hope to continue having these discussions. This is all part of the Youth as Agents of Change initiative, sponsored by the Pan American Health Organization. I'm Tiffany Skerritt, and this is all for now.